Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. I am so excited to have with me today Bethel Barr. Bethel is the author of Crystal Corridor of Light. This is an audiobook that I had the privilege and thorough enjoyment of narrating. So Bethel, thank you so much and welcome.
Well, thank you, Becky. I appreciate that we're doing this and that I have a chance to have this interview. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, learning more and about you and your writing process, and also, some of the information and messages that you've brought forth in your book. So if it's okay, I would love to hear just a little bit more about the writing itself. So I know, in the book, we learn a little bit about how you ended up writing a book, but I'd love to dive just a little deeper, if we could, into that process, what that was like for you. And can you tell us, how it got started and what that process of writing this book was like for you?
Well, because I never in this lifetime consciously aspired to write a book, it was shocking to me to learn that that was what I had agreed to do before I came here. I always liked and enjoyed writing. I've written many blogs, but writing a book was different. And I thought of many topics, and biography was one of them, but I thought, oh no, I'm not doing that. And because that was the hardest part, that putting myself, opening my heart, and telling the public all my feelings and, the emotions that came along a spiritual path. But I couldn't do it without being honest. I couldn't write the book without that honesty. So I did. I came from the heart. It was very difficult in lots of ways. And because of that reluctance, I dragged my feet quite a bit at the beginning, and I resisted writing it because it meant I needed to put myself out there to everyone. And, my parents and my own my parents' death, both of them, and that's in the book. And my own path has been such an amazing, incredible path that it's so special to me. So to put that in a book was difficult, and I did resist. And finally, I just realized, you know what, I have to do this. Talking to myself, I need to do this. So I just did it, but it took quite a while for me to reach that point where I could, come from the heart and be truthful.
What you bring up is so powerful, I think, because I come from the training in acting. And this is exactly what we also do as actors, is make ourselves vulnerable. I haven't always thought about the writing process as much in that light, but what you're saying is so true, is that really that is a process of opening ourselves up, which can be scary in this world that feels sometimes so judgmental about, who we are or what we think or what we do. So kudos to you, because that takes strength and it takes courage to be able to do that. And what a beautiful message you've brought forth in this book. So many messages. I just think the more beings that are, that have the courage to bring forth and share with the rest of the world, with these messages is going to help us all. So one of the things that really stood out to me was how you expressed about how sometimes when we share the truth of our experiences, and this is that becoming vulnerable, right? That others judge us.
Yes.
And your decision to share these experiences in that light, I think is just such an expression, a beautiful expression of trust and of love. And I'd love to hear more if you have more to share about that decision to write and to publish in the face of that.
I'm just starting to do some videos that are replacing my blogs on my website. And the first one I did was labeled, "Are You a Warrior of Light?"
Mm.
And it was the very first one I've ever done. And it's not great, but it's not bad. But the message is in there. And that's what we have to do in order to carry on, no matter what happens, and no matter what we're faced with. And I have committed my life to this path. And that hasn't been easy, but nobody said it would be easy. There's many souls on this planet that have a much more difficult path than I chose. But as far as the judgmental part, that never really bothered me very much, because there's a brief chapter in my book called The Call of the Soul. And when an aspirant or a disciple follows that call and commits themselves to that path, when you start learning the truth of existence here is all about, then it's like, you know too much, you can't go back, because going back is not an option. Going forward is the only way we can move. And I've just dedicated and committed to this path. And the importance of what's contained within that book supersedes my feelings. It superseded my feelings of lack of confidence in that I could even do it. And it superseded the judgment that I might attract, because that doesn't matter to me. And a wise little person said to me one time, and I put this in my book, "What other people think of me is none of my business. That's their world." So everyone has their own level that they operate on.
Right.
And if we all would just accept each other,
yes,
and each other's path, and where everyone is on their path, it would be helpful. But
it would, wouldn't it?
The judgment never really bothered me.
Yeah. That's great. And what a gift then for all those people who are really eager for this kind of information. It was so exciting when I, in reading about when you first started to find your people, so first finding your tribe, the people that have more of an awareness and are eager and ready for that light and that truth. I just remember it was like it brought tears to my eyes, because I was like, oh, yes. It's in some ways, we think about when in the publishing world, we think about like finding our audience. It was similar to that, but a little bit more like finding your family, There
are so many souls who are looking for answers, and they don't know where to look. I didn't. Yeah. I just kept looking. And then everything just kind of fell into place, and the answers came. The more I moved forward, the more I learned, and life finally made sense to me. It never did before I started this path. But there's a lot of people that are starting to question the status quo, starting to say, well, why is our world in such a mess? And it's simply because we put ourselves ahead of others, and it's lack of acceptance of others, and it's lack of understanding of others. And when an aspirant, a disciple, a seeker, whatever you want to call us, reaches for spirit, reaches and makes that connection with the higher dimensions, that's where the answers are. And that's where our real power is, in making that connection. And it's just an amazing journey once that happens. And we begin to learn the truth of what is really going on.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. In your book, you share some channeled messages. And I just would love it if you would share a little bit about your experiences in channeling, what that is like, what it feels like or what that experience is like. I don't know if that's something that can be described, but I think people would be really interested. I know I would be.
I always had this urge where I wanted to channel. I wanted to bring in those incredible messages of love and hope and encouragement.
Yeah.
And I always felt inadequate. I thought, how am I supposed to do this? And once I realized to quit expecting it to happen in a certain way, it just happened. And that's what happens. We have expectations about how something is going to happen. And then that's kind of a blockage. And when we just allow, then it's much easier when we're willing and we just say, okay, and that's what I did. You know what? I want to do this. But the messages came to me in a variety of ways, not just one way. I would have clairaudience. I would hear a voice right beside me, like 3 feet from me, and it was always on the right side. It was like somebody was standing there, and I'd look, nobody was there, but I heard this voice. And usually those messages were very short, like a sentence. And then I would get words just pop into my head. And Spirit will give us what we need the way we would best understand it. And I did a lot of meditation. I still do, not as much as I did. But that was my main avenue, was because in meditation, we relax, open ourselves up, and allow more easily.
Right.
I'm also a dedicated walker, and I walk every day. And as I'm walking along, thoughts will randomly come into my head. And pretty soon I realize those thoughts are given to me for a reason. So then my mind starts to head in a specific direction. And pretty soon I receive a knowing. I just know the answer to something that I've been pondering. And then in meditation, when I channeled the Mother Goddess, that was most of it was in meditation. And I have a little recorder, not very big. And I started recording because I thought, this is great. This is special. Yeah. So I started recording it, and then I thought it was finished. So I finished my meditation, went for a walk, but something told me to take my recorder. So I took my little recorder, put it in my pocket, and I was almost finished my walk when I thought, well, I guess I made a mistake. I guess there's no more coming through. And then it started to come in again. So I took the recorder in my pocket and I recorded out there on my walk. And so that was the Mother Goddess. Archangel Michael's message is it's very short. And it's in my book right after the introduction. And that one is also very special to me. I received that in meditation. And I think it's, of course, it's told to us by an archangel. So, of course, it's beautiful. But I just love the way the way Archangel Michael put those words together to give to me. It was a huge gift, and I wanted to share it. And some of them I channeled during some of my classes, because 10 years or more, I hosted classes on Meetup. Mm-hmm. I get most of my information as a knowing, but it will also come in if I'm hosting a meeting. I will sometimes feel influx of energy coming in through my crown chakra, and it comes into my body. And especially, it used to happen when we were in the middle of a discussion, like the group, and if Spirit was always there. So if they wanted to interject, then I received this huge influx of energy, and that told me there was something they wanted to give to the group. So then I would allow their words to come through. And sometimes it would come in as energy, and I can't really explain it much better than I just knew what to say. And
Yeah.
I do some counseling as well, spiritual counseling. I'm not a doctor. This is spiritual counseling. And I will receive messages that are important to the person that I'm working with. And they will say things in a different way than I do. So I just know, well, that came from them.
Let's take a short pause and come right back.
Getting your memoir into audio can be a delicate process, best treated with a nurturing and supportive approach. Many authors assume that when a memoir is recorded, it needs to be in the author's voice. And while sometimes that is best, it is not always the best option. At Pro Audio Voices, we'll work through that decision with you and support you in the production process, whichever way you choose. If you decide to narrate, we set you up for success with a range of options, from having an audio engineer and director on the line for every recording session, to getting you properly set up for recording on your own. If we hire a professional narrator, we'll make sure the voice is the right fit for you and your memoir. At Pro Audio Voices, your story is important to us. Let's inspire the world together.
We're back with Bethel Barr, author of Crystal Corridor of Light. You brought up a couple of really interesting things in your description. One was about that feeling of knowing, and that you recognize that, right? And it seems to me like there are that a part of our work as seekers is to open ourselves and sort of prepare ourselves in a sort of quieting of the chaos and noise of the world in general, so that we can have those moments of clarity around, oh yeah, I know this thing. Or to even, and the other thing that you mentioned was about you would have thoughts. And I was reminded, when I meditate, often as soon as I start meditating, then the clarity of thought is just so much clearer. Oh, okay, these are the things. And then I'll stop and write them down. But, that recognizing the thought as something that we're receiving. So often we have this idea of either we're thinking like we're trying to solve a problem kind of thinking, like I am intentionally thinking through something, or we're just like at the mercy of whatever is in our field, There's something more you've touched on there, yeah.
Spirit will tell us that we all channel. In fact, I believe Lord Sananda, Jesus gave me that, and that is in my book. We all channel. We just don't recognize it. Like we channel love and we channel lots of energies, but we're channeling information when we don't even realize it. We think it's our idea, but we have a team of angels and guides and beings working with us all of the time, including our high self. There's ascended masters, there's archangels, there's Archangel Michael said one time, call on spirit. Now, I don't remember his exact words, but call on us. And then what he did say that I remember that were his words, there are many unemployed angels out there. So call on spirit, and they're just willing and ready to help. We just have to make the effort and ask. Sometimes they help us when we don't reach out. But when we do reach out, it makes it a lot better. They can give us more. They can come in more often. We just have to recognize that they're there and allow that connection. It is so incredible. And once someone actually feels that and knows there's this consciously knows that they have made that connection, I just want to keep talking to them. I chatter away at them all the time. It's quite wonderful.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. This brings me right to my next question is, what would you like readers and listeners to take away from the messages from your book, I guess?
The book is about assistance. It's about assisting other seekers. That's all it's ever been about. I didn't start it because I wanted to. I started it because it was I realized that it was part of my mission here. It was part of the work that I do. And so of course, I wasn't going to say, no, I'm not going to write it. And I just didn't know how to go about it. But everything I have learned has been so beneficial to me, not only on the path of spirituality, but just in good all-round living and looking at the person in the grocery store and not judging them and understanding that maybe they're having a bad day or something. It's helped me in my day-to-day living, accepting and understanding the others and the world around me and why things are the way they are. And that's what's so needed, I think, is that people don't accept others because they don't understand that we're all one, that we're all here. Everyone's playing a role. Karma has something to do with it. And there's really no good or bad. And if humanity hadn't suffered oppression over the eons, we wouldn't have had a chance to grow, because you can't really make a lot of movement forward in evolution if everything's nice all the time. It's only through adversity that we learn to overcome situations and the negative energies. Yeah. So it's all about helping.
Thank you.
It's all about helping others. It's not about anything else.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's chat just a little bit about the audiobook and its specifically and the process. I know that when we first talked, you were thinking that you might need to record it yourself, and then we explored having me narrate it. So can you tell me a little bit about that decision?
I would just love to tell the world what a wonderful narrator you are, Becky. And the reason I wanted to do it myself was because those are my words, and I put them on paper. I wrote them. And of course, some of it is spirit, from spirit as well. Because as I would write, I would channel often. But because it was my work, I thought there was nobody else that could bring it across to the public like I could. And then I realized that you're the professional in that area, not me. And I just felt like you were the one that needed to do it. And there was my knowing again, I guess. And when the first time I listened to the audio version after you sent it to me, it was very emotional. And I didn't even really realize until then how good you were at what you do. And as far as the rest, the interaction that I've had with your company, Pro Audio Voices, has been a very positive experience. And I would happily recommend your company to anyone, because I've been very satisfied. When I chose your company, I had a few other choices, but I followed my knowing. I followed my intuition, my instinct. I didn't know any of you. I just chose you because that's what felt right. And I haven't been sorry. So
yeah, great.
I guess I can't really add to that. It's been a very positive experience. And I'm glad that you narrated it instead of me.
Well, I'm glad that I got to narrate it, because I love the material. And just, when I am narrating an author's book, it's like I get to step inside your shoes for a little bit. I get to be, it's very intimate for me as a narrator, that relationship with the material because it is, it's all the oneness of it all becomes very real for me. The oneness of you with the words and the words with me and me with you.
I was, to be truthful, I was a bit surprised at how good you were and how you did just that, how you got inside of my head sort of, or my heart, whatever, and you were able to bring the message across, and it felt to me like you were coming from the heart. And I was mildly surprised, but pleased. You did a good job, and
Thank you.
I'm very happy I entrusted my special work to you because it is very dear to my heart.
Great. Thank you. Let's let our listeners know how they can learn more about you and your stories. What is the website that they should visit?
The website is Crystal Corridor of Light, but I've had, for the actual name of it, it's crystalcorridorlight.com.
Crystal Corridor Light, right?
Yeah, there's no of in it. And there's on that website is all the links to the books.
Great.
And then I will be putting the audio one on as well when I get that from the publisher.
Great. Very good. Well, Bethel, I want to thank you so much for this time with me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. This again is Bethel Barr, author of Crystal Corridor of Light. Thanks, Bethel.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.